It was a balmy autumn evening. Author Robert Frost ventured out of his house for a walk in the woods. There were 2 roads leading into the woods. For about 10 minutes, he kept standing there, deciding upon which road to take. The sky was unusually grey with monstrous-looking clouds. After much thought, he chose to take the road he had never taken before. Little did he know that this would be the longest road he would ever take in his lifetime. The road that Robert took cut through the woods and led directly towards a morgue that stood a few meters away from a hospital building. At the backside of the morgue was a vast, abandoned meadow. Nobody who worked inside the morgue or lived nearby dared to venture inside this meadow, even during the day. The meadow was covered by grasses and was mostly dark because the sunlight failed to reach the ground. The overgrown, dense clusters of trees on the meadow gave the look of mouths of monsters peeking from the darkness. Robert, however, had no idea that a place like that existed. Having taken a new road, he was simply in the mood for adventure. Inside his jacket's pocket was a small notebook that he was carrying for noting ideas and writing inspiration that came to him as he walked in solitude. When Robert reached the end of the road in the woods and came across the hospital building, he decided to stop by and meet one of his friends who worked as a doctor there. He walked inside and asked the receptionist about the doctor. The receptionist was seemingly so busy on the telephone receiver that she didn't say a word, just pointed her finger to the back of her shoulder. Robert took her cue as a sign that the doctor was somewhere on the back side of the building. Robert looked hither-thither, waiting for someone to show up so he could ask them to guide him to the back door in the building. But after about 15 minutes, when no one showed up and the receptionist was still on her phone, he walked inside to find the doctor himself. He crossed the ground floor lobby, walked into a corridor, took an elevator, and arrived in what seemed like an empty hall. No one was there, just empty cabins, lit here and there by dim tube lights. He descended a staircase leading into the basement. Down to the basement, it was completely dark. Except for giant metal cabinets and some stretchers, the hall was totally empty. He walked to the right side. A bat flitted towards him from the dark corner, shooting dust on his face. For a moment, Robert's breath was caught in his heart. He immediately turned away and raced towards the other side. On the way, he noticed a door with a tiny peephole and an exit sign. Thinking that he would meet his doctor friend on some other day, he opened the door and walked out. It was already nighttime and the air had become cooler. As cool air brushed against his cheeks, he took a sigh of relief. The hospital had been unusually quiet. He wondered why. Suddenly, the choking smell of smoke filled his nostrils. He noticed a faint yellowish glow materializing from behind the bushes. In another moment, he noticed a man in a hospital guard uniform walking towards him with a lantern. "Who are you? A doctor?" he asked. "No, I am a poet," Robert answered. "What are you doing alone in the morgue at this time?" The guard mumbled in a nervous tone. Robert seemed confused. It took him a few seconds to realize that he had entered the wrong corridor and accidentally stepped inside the morgue attached to the building. Where he stood currently was a meadow on the backside of the morgue. The guard told him that since long, the meadow has become a ceremonial ground for the people of a nearby ghetto. On the night of the full moon, these people gather here and carry out a soul retrieval ritual. Soul retrieval? Robert questioned. The guard explained that the people chant spells to gather the dead souls from the bodies in the morgue and hire them to protect their ghetto from unforeseen destruction and evil. They believed that the spirits would enter their bodies and convey information from afterlife, which could be helpful and valuable for their ghetto. Curious, Robert asked the guard to take him to the ceremonial place. He thought the site would be an interesting inspiration for one of his poems. The guard agreed with the promise that he would return as soon as he dropped him there. The two started walking deeper into the dense foliage of the meadow. The ceremonial altar was visible from a distance thanks to the bonfire that illuminated it. Around the bonfire was a circle of people who were rolling their eyes and snaking their spines in hysterical fashion, all of them wailing and weeping. Before the guard could slip away, Robert got a sneeze, and suddenly, people around the fire stopped crying. Everyone's gaze was fixated at them, dripping with suspicion. A man who seemed to be the head of the ghetto turned his eyes towards a young man. The young man stood up, pulled Robert from his sleeve, and pushed him in front of the circle, so he went flinging down on the ground. Another man dragged the skittish-looking guard and tossed him alongside Robert. "When will you people understand? We have asked the police not to interfere with our rituals. Now you two will die," the young man barked. Die," the guard murmured, his lips trembling. Robert sat up and down on his ankles and said, You are mistaken. We are not police. We're just normal people. I am a poet." One man was about to dig an arrow in his chest when another stood up and said, "Wait, he could be useful." Everyone in the circle suddenly got interested and started looking at each other. "Can you read this?" one man asked, extending a thick leathery diary toward him. Robert opened the book. Its pages were filled with a handwritten script he couldn't understand. Thinking that the only way to save himself was to make the people believe that he was useful. So he answered yes. Laughter erupted. The ghetto people hired Robert to read the spells for them, but he couldn't go back to his house. He had to stay in the ghetto as long as he worked for them. If ever he decided to leave the ghetto, he would be killed, because he had become an unwilling witness of their ritual. Every month, Robert would have to read a spell for invoking the spirits from the morgue. On every night of the full moon, he would accompany these people to the backside of the meadow and read his spells while they wept and mourned to call the spirits. In the middle of the night, they would start rolling and shaking their spines as if the spirits had possessed them and start roaring in uncanny voices. They never realized that Robert was tricking them by spelling gibberish in the name of the book's chants. Robert was tasked with recording these messages so they could be analyzed in the future. Since there was only one way to enter the meadow, the morgue's exit door, Robert had always wondered how did these people came here. But while he stayed with them, he got to know that they had carved a hole in the building's tall sidewall, which they had covered with a giant rock. Every full moon, they would pull away this rock and sneak inside the meadow through the hole. Robert wanted to go home and live his own life and write poetry and books, and here he was, trapped in the sinister ghetto. Meanwhile, the guard was trapped too. He was tasked with guarding the ghetto, or else lose his life. It was likely their 4th month in the ghetto, because they had attended the soul-calling ritual on 3 full moon nights. On the 4th full moon, he told the ghetto residents that the next spell required them to be present on a holy oak tree where the spirits would come and enter their bodies to grant their blessings. He also asked them to bring oil for this specific spell. The group combed the forest and found a giant oak tree. During the ritual, the people climbed the dense oak and settled on the branches while Robert stood below reading the spells. He instructed them to close their eyes for full immersion. While the people were immersed in his spells, he quietly gestured to the god. He quietly picked up the oil can and spilled it around the tree, then plodded towards the bonfire, picked up a stick and tossed it at the tree's foot. Within a few seconds, blazes leapt up the tree and swallowed the weeping ghetto party. Robert couldn't figure out whether they were still crying for the ritual or out of pain. He didn't even bother to. Before anyone could jump down, Robert and the guard raced and flitted towards the morgue's building. They tried entering through the back door, but it was closed. They started hysterically pounding on the door so someone would listen. When no one answered, they used the same hole in the wall to exit the meadow. Hopping on the other side, they arrived in the hospital's courtyard. They rushed inside the hospital building and ascended upstairs. On the counter was the same receptionist in the same clothes he had seen her wearing the previous time. For a moment, she looked at Robert as if trying to recall something. She moved her gaze through his shabby clothes and said, "You are still here." Robert stared at her, nonplussed. He asked her the date and realized only a day had passed before he exited the morgue's back door. He didn't notice that the guard wasn't around. He must have been too scared that he ran away already, Robert thought. In the thick of the night, he almost ran through the woods, tumbling and tripping, to find his way back home. The ghetto's leathery book was still in his hands. In the last moment, he had decided to take it, so he would decipher the strange text inside. All the while, he had thought that the ghetto people were ordinary, superstitious humans pretending to get possessed. But after he started analyzing the book's text using a lexicon from his library, his spine jangled in horror. Turned out that it was the diary of a man who too had visited the ghetto and become trapped there. He was the hospital's night watchman. One of the lines in the text translated to, "They cry near the place where the dead lay, and the dead transferred their powers to them." The text on another page left him open-mouthed in sheer disbelief. He started shaking. The man had written that the ghetto itself was not real, neither the guard. All these people were dead souls who got trapped in the morgue while they were still alive, so their souls were hanging between life and death. The morgue was haunted, and nobody except him and the man who wrote the diary knew about it. After 3 nights of a nerve-wracking revelation, Robert sat down on his desk and composed a poem about a road that he had taken, that had made a huge difference in what he now felt, thought, and understood about life. Whether you believe ghosts are real or whether you believe they are not, you are right.